Claude Opus 4.8 just dropped, and I was able to make some crazy applications with this. But before we get there, let's get to see what Opus 4.8 is and what's the difference between the rest of the models. Starting off, we see here that 4.8 beats out Opus 4.7 in well everything, as it should, because this is the more recent model, but also beats out ChatGPT 5.5 and Gemini 3.1 Pro in most use cases, at least that they have here. We see that it beats it out in agentic coding, mostly disciplinary reasoning with humanity's last exam, and computer use, knowledge work, and agentic financial analysis. We do see that it doesn't beat ChatGPT 5.5 in agentic terminal use, which is interesting, but it's still overall more powerful model than the latest version, and it's beating out 5.5, which means that we're probably going to have a 5.5 come here pretty soon. But also the feel of this model is going to be a little different as well, because they say that Opus 4.8 doesn't just hallucinate answers, is actually going to give answers only if it actually knows that it's correct or is data backed. Also, there's new things that came with Opus 4.8, which is this effort feature, which you can now give Claude a level of effort that you want it to have from low to max. And this can help you control your token use, which is very good because this model is expensive, but maybe not as expensive as you think. Claude Opus 4.8 is actually staying the same as the previous Opus 4.7, which is $5 per million tokens input and $25 per million token output, which means that this is probably one of the more priciest models that we have on the market, but it's not as bad. But also a new ability that came to Claude is this fast mode, which speeds up how fast Opus goes, and that bumps up the price to, well, basically double, $10 per million token and $50 per million token, making it a pretty pricey model. But overall, we know that it's always a cycle with these models. Whichever one drops the last is usually the best. And it's also interesting that they did Gemini 3.1 Pro instead of their latest Gemini model, which I believe is 3.5 Flash. So they must have been testing this for a while before actually releasing it, or maybe it just didn't beat out Gemini 3.5. Either way, I did get to test this out, and I didn't want to just give it one of those bouncing ball tests or a little ball going around in a circle and you can speed it up and slow it down. I wanted to make two different tests. One is more of a business process test, and another one is more of a fun game example to see just how far Opus 4.8 has come. The first one I did, I am a YouTuber, and if you want to be a YouTuber, one of these things that you have to do are thumbnails, and I have this folder that has a few thumbnails on there. And I wanted Opus to be able to make a swipe file, or basically a thumbnail organizer, which allows me to search for different thumbnails that I have or that I think are cool, and give me thumbnails when I'm searching for them, instead of having to just scroll endlessly to find the thumbnail that I want. As well as you could put in your title inside of the thumbnail in order to, well, see what title matches your thumbnail the most. As you see here, I think it has a really good display. It has that 4x4 grid display, or at least 4 thumbnails on each row. I think it's infinitely scrolling for depending on how many thumbnails you have here, which is, I think, pretty interesting. And it tells you the total number of it. And let's say I want to have a thumbnail about like history. I could then just search different thumbnails about history, and then it'll pop up the thumbnails that have to do with history, or that would work well with history for the particular thumbnail in question. And I think overall it had a good layout. The drawback here is I did run into some issues where Gemini or Claude did not do this in one shot, but I did have this on the low effort setting, so that may be the reason, because it defaults to high and it can go all the way to max, and high is the best balance, but it does burn through tokens a lot faster than the low effort one. But after I prompted it again to say that, hey, the search is not letting me see the thumbnails, it then fixed it and it's working just fine now. And we can even see that even in the thumbnails, here, it does have some metadata already attached to them to say like hummers, productivity, shocking face reaction, and some tags and metadata already associated to, well, the image. And I thought that was pretty good because that would be a good business use case if somebody wanted to do Opus 4.8 for business. But what about for fun? Well, I'm a really big fan of first-person shooters, so I asked it to make a first-person shooting game. And of course, it prompted me to, well, ask me what kind of first-person shooter game do I want, because of course there's different varieties. And I was kind of going for a more Call of Duty feel, so of course I said military-style shooter. And well, it created it. It took actually a while for it to create this game, and when it first created it, it wouldn't let me play. When I tried to click start, it just didn't do anything. And for me, in my experience with Claude, when I'm making games, those are sometimes the normal issue. It usually is the second or third time when it actually does really well with making games. But in this time, once I asked it to fix it because it's not letting me play, it took a lot longer. It took probably 3 to 4 minutes of just AI doing its thing, and then it spat out this game here. And this game actually is pretty fun. As you see, I kind of got all the way up to level 30, level 40, or wave 30, wave 40 in this game. And this game, I'm able to shoot the targets, move left, right, up, down, back and forth. And it's a pretty good, stable game. And I think the graphics here are a lot better because they're like 3D objects instead of being 2D. So it looks really kind of crisp if you ask me. And that's Opus 4.8 in a nutshell. They're making pretty good substantial progress with Opus. But one thing I did also want to highlight was Claude's dynamic workflow, which I don't necessarily have access to right now because it's only for enterprise and max users at this point in time. But basically, this is where you can spin up 100 different agents in order to do tasks. They say that this agent feature is really good and you're able to do it for code reviews, fixing bugs, and you can run this on huge scale of different code. They say that it may be also good for large migration and just critical work that you may want to be checked twice but quickly. And so I think that's going to be a huge productivity boost for people using Opus. But tell me what you think down in the comment section down below. Do you think that Opus 4.8 is a really big difference from 4.7, or are you a little bit underwhelmed? If you want to keep up with the latest and greatest AI news, you definitely like and subscribe. With that being said, Dexter out.